protection agency, to be facilitating conversations amongst everybody to get to the celebration that we're going to be having here today. So I want to just recognize that it's been a long stretch, and we're just really happy to be here tonight. So I know a lot of people that I've been seeing here tonight are just happy to be here and happy to be hearing what's going on. Tonight's meeting is focused on the EPA's decision regarding J.H. Baxter. I'm going to let them tell you about it. I'm going to steal their thunder. You probably read about it in the paper, and that's why you're here. But it's been, like I said, it's been 5 years since I got involved, when I was called and told from DEQ, hey, we found some strange things in public parks, and we'd like to start working with community members and finding out what's going on in their yards. And then we would like to figure out what to do about all of that. So we started talking to some people and started talking to some community members and realized that we needed to have more regular conversations and build rapport and build trust between the community and the agencies so that everybody was really having a sense of what was happening, what should be happening both on the ground with the lived experience of people living nearby and also in the agencies. So it's been a very powerful project to be part of, I will say that. I'm an outside facilitator. I facilitate and mediate conversations. But this one has been, I would say, the most rewarding conversations that I've had in probably my career, actually. So I'm really happy to be here tonight with all of you. I want to encourage everybody to use some of the discussion principles that we used in the core team. And before I even say more about that, so the core team was the community, the agency staff, some of the managers as well, who would come together. They started like every 4 weeks at the beginning, and then moved to every 6 weeks, then moved to every 2 months as things were moving along and studies were being done, and then moved to quarterly, and then as needed. So this is actually a core team meeting. So to a certain degree, I mean, it's EPA's meeting, but it's also a core team meeting. So I would just like to find the core team members in the room. If you can either stand or raise your hand, I want everybody to recognize you for the hard work you have done. So thank you for being part of it. Some of the agencies are going in shy and sitting down. There's a bunch more out there. But it's a pretty big team that would meet regularly on Zoom. So all of this started from my perspective in 2020. I know for you all this has been going on for 15, 20 years. So, but my engagement started, and so did the core team, online for 2 years. So to this day, it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize you were that tall, Max. So you look so small on the Zoom, right? Okay, so I just want to say, let's use some in the conversation today. I want you to listen as though you might be wrong throughout the conversation, and when you speak as though you're right, because your experience is your experience. It's the right thing, and there might be, if you listen with curiosity, you might find that you may not know all of the answers, but someone else in this room might. So I'm hoping that that's true for everybody here, that we're all just listening to hear more about what's going on and what has gone on, and that is our agenda. Our agenda is, why are we here? EPA is going to talk about that. Then we're going to move into, what has EPA been doing over at J.H. Baxter? What is EPA going to do next? What are the next steps on all of that? And then question and answer. And there will be a little time in between there to talk to our presenters about that. You're going to see a lot of pictures. I know you can't really see J.H. Baxter when you drive past. You're going to get to see behind the curtain here tonight. So it's going to be cool. All right? Question. Then at 8 o'clock, thank you very much, at 8 o'clock, we are going to have the Active Bethel Community Board meeting. So for those of you who want to say, if we get done with this part of EPA and others sooner than that, then you can start sooner. But we're planning 8 o'clock to have a meeting with the Active Bethel Community Board. We thank them very much for helping us to arrange this beautiful space here in the school, Cascade Middle School. It is not as hot as it was at the high school. We had a high school meeting a couple years ago. So we're very happy to be here and see this lovely space. Let's see. I do want to say that we have people, the thing that looks like an owl standing on a stand is an owl standing on a stand. But it's a giant microphone, and it's got a camera on top. And we've got people who are online. How many people we got online, Emily? Roughly.
We have 30 folks
Okay.
We're probably this a little bit closer, but it's really bigger.
All right, we'll try and hold this down here and see if that might help, so that they can let us know we're going to be catching people coughing and talking and all that sort of thing. So that will be important, because while we are having the presentations, I want to be mindful that there are folks online who are trying to hear the presentation as well, and we will do everything we can to help them hear what we are saying when we are saying it. Is that better? It's getting better and better. Okay, let's bring that baby over here. Okay, there we go. Okay, technical details, right? Okay, much better. Okay, very good. All right, so Randy, wherever you are, that's going to be your thing. Am I missing anything else? Am I missing anything? Looking to see from anyone else? I do want to see, let's find out how many people are part of the Active Bethel Community Board. Can you raise your hands? Yeah, okay, good. How many people live near J.H. Baxter? Wonderful. So glad you're here. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. How many of you are elected officials? Okay, excellent, good. And who else might I be missing? How many of you work for the city? Excellent. How many of you, there's no one back there, good, thank you. How many work for the county? Fantastic. How many work for the state? Okay. How many work for the federal government, for EPA? Fantastic. Okay. All right. Wonderful. Well, with no further ado then, let me turn this over to some folks who might, yes, please?
I work for Bethel.
And you work for Bethel. You taught in Bethel. 28 years. Thank you for your service. That's wonderful. And smelled it. Yeah. Smelled it, right? How many people smelled it? Okay, that's good. All right. So with that, I think I will turn it over and let the EPA Region 10 Regional Administrator, Emma Pilkin, tell you a little bit about why we're here and some of the good news from EPA. So if I can turn this over to you, Emma, please come on up. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you very much, Donna, and thank you for sorting out the IT issues, hopefully, before everybody else got started. I appreciate that. Thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you coming out on a weekday evening and spending your time with us to learn more about the site. I've been in the regional administrator spot since February. I came from Alaska DEC and have worked for the state of Alaska in a number of positions since 2013. So have some foundation in some of the work that EPA does, but still learning and really appreciative to the team today that showed me around and shared about the work that they're doing here and about the Superfund program. So J.H. Baxter operated for 80 years, began operating in 1943, at a time before we had a lot of the environmental statutes and a lot of the environmental programs that we have in place today. And even once we did have environmental programs in place, they, it sounds like, have a bit of a mixed history in terms of compliance at the facility. And members of the community living closest to that, I think, have been hopefully engaged in bringing some of that to light. So now we have a facility that just ceased operations in 2022. It sounds like a couple of years after Donna started working on the site and engaging with the community. And so we have sort of, it sounds like, started the investigation process, got out, took a look around, saw that there was a need for a time-critical removal action to get out there and really take care of some of the product and the facility that had been left not operating, but a lot of the chemical products left in place. So I want to say thank you to Beth and her team, and Justin and Alice and Annie, and am I forgetting somebody? Annie. Randy. Oh, Randy. And he'll be speaking later, too, so we can thank him again. For showing me around the site today, really based on the pictures from just like about a year ago, the change has really been quite dramatic in terms of the work that's already been done at the site. I think it's $13 million that EPA has invested in the work so far. And now now that we have the listing in place, that's a big next step and really a big accomplishment because it opens the doors to a lot more work to finish up cleaning up the site. So we'll have EPA teams engaged doing that, and I think we'll have, as Donna said, a little bit more later on the work that has been done and the work that's on the horizon. But I also wanted to take a moment not just to thank the EPA staff and the Oregon, State of Oregon partners as well for all of the work that folks have done, but also the community. It's clear to me, based on the briefings that I've gotten internally, that really the community's engagement on the issue and bringing it to light and the community's support for EPA's engagement and for the listing has been really critical in getting us to this step. So thank you all for coming tonight, but also thank you for all of the engagement over the years to get us where we are. And I'm going to turn it over to Shannon Davis from Oregon DEQ to share their experience from the state's perspective.
Howdy, everybody. Shannon Davis again with DEQ. I'm going to say what Emma said, but just differently, okay? It's just such a joy to come and be part of this milestone. It's my Achilles heel. Thank you. Yes, I'll try. Okay, is that better? Okay, thank you for asking. Well, first of all, welcome to a warm evening in Eugene, right? It is toasty. I confess that I Googled to see what the hottest day in Eugene was, and we're not even close, okay? So it's triple digits is the high. But just to be here today, to celebrate in the milestone and to have everyone here and the contributions is really, really significant. And so many people have contributed to that, but I really want a huge shout out to EPA because this is going to get listed, it's going to get cleaned up the way that it needs to be cleaned up. And if we can also just imagine revitalization, right? Reuse, something to come new. And also EPA was so good, like the administrator mentioned, that they came in and did a response action. 40 drums maybe full of hazardous waste that was removed in that action, and another huge milestone there. So a couple shout outs. The Community Engagement Core team that you called out, and everybody in here is so significant. I think it's just very precious in these times where we get a core team that actually is able to work together, and I'm not saying it was all kumbaya the whole way, but you found yourself able to get to this place and to push for this. For, EPA, DEQ, LRAPA, Oregon Health Authority, City of Eugene, County, but others, a couple of others that I think probably really had very powerful voices came from the environmental advocacy space, specifically beyond toxics. Yeah. Right? Okay, right on. And I don't know if Lisa Arkin, is she? Great. I've heard about you, right, but I never had the chance to meet you. Right on. And then I think your successor, Jen Davis, at the agency. Hi. And just being in the room tonight, Lynn Woodward, where are you? Like so many people are here because of you. I just want you to know, like a half a dozen people said, I'm here because of you. So you must have a really powerful presence and a powerful magnetism that draws people to get good stuff done. So thank you very much. Yeah. And I'm going to be totally biased. I just want to shout out to some peeps in my agency. Sorry, Sarah. I'm going to thank you in public. You don't have to stand up though. Sarah Eagle, Don Hansen, and Brad Schultz. So whatever our connection is to this milestone, what we share is being part of a community that cares deeply about the site being cleaned up, about ensuring healthy air, healthy land, healthy water, the community and ecosystem. And everyone in this room stands on the shoulders of people who've come before us to make what is possible tonight happening. And also those who follow will be standing on our shoulders, right? And so no one person can make it happen. It takes a community. Again, thank you for being a part of this community, because together we are better. And so I'm supposed to introduce somebody now. Senator James Manning, you're up.
Thank you. That was an excellent introduction. I think I need to get you on my team so I can take you out with me and you can introduce me. Good evening, everyone. How are you doing? It is very hot today. A lot of problems. But we're here now to celebrate a milestone. A lot of people worked on this for a number of years. What was it, something like how many years? Baxter had been in order at 80-something years? Well, not the folks that's working on it, but the practice of poisoning our community had been going on for 80-something years. One of the questions that I have and still have, whether or not some of the residents that lived in that area during that period of time, if there were any medical conditions that were developed because of these toxins that they were coming in contact with every day, children playing in the park. I would never know that answer right now because people have left. There was no record of people saying that they were feeling ill or any type of birth defects and stuff as a result of the poisoning of our community by this company that was put profit above people. As mentioned, I am Senator James Manning. This is my district, and I live in Bethel. I've been living in Bethel for 18 years since I retired out of the Army. I love Bethel. The people here are nice. The people here are hardworking. They deserve answers. And now we're starting to get some answers. We're getting some help. This is a milestone to be declared a Superfund site, and for our federal partners, state agencies, local partners, local agencies, to all band together. But what's really more important, the resiliency of the people that live in Bethel, specifically those that live close to or nearby Baxter. I still wonder each and every day, what are the causational impacts of living in that area for so many times? We know that a lot of military installations that they're uncovering saying groundwater is contaminated. And all those folks that have lived there for years and years have gone on and may have received some kind of medical condition, perhaps even some type of birth defects, but never would notice or tie it to that particular area. So I'm not going to stand up here and say a lot, but I did have to say that. And even though my committee, I did highlight this. In the Senate, I am the chair of the Veterans Emergency Management Federal and World Affairs Committee. So my committee is very broad. I can listen to a lot of things, nationally, internationally, specifically local issues that deal with this. And I did talk about J.H. Baxter in one of my committees, how they should be held accountable. But let me give a quick shout out to our federal partners. I got a long list here. Let me start out with just a few. DQ, where are you? All right. Put your hands in the air, waving like you just don't care. There you go. L. Rappa, where are you? The EPA. Put them up. Hey, you got to represent your agency now. Come on now. I'm not cutting any budgets, so don't worry about it. Just let me see who you are. OHA. Nobody from the Oregon Health. Oh, they're online, huh? Well, raise your hands up. I can't see you, but I'll pretend that I saw you raise your hands up. The people that live in the Bethel community, put your hands up. And all of our supporters. This is a big milestone, as I said, that we're on and now we're coming to some kind of closure. But before I introduce the next speaker, the one that's going to trail me, Lisa, can you stand up? And I got one more. Lynn, you have to stand up. Thank you. These two ladies have been leading me on this journey, letting me know what's going on, how I can help, where I should be for the duration, a long time since we've been on this road. Now we're here, a milestone. And with that, again, I said I wasn't going to be here long. I've already thanked most of the people that are out there. So let me introduce the young man that's going to follow me is a very good friend of mine. His wife is an exceptional cook. They invited me to their house one time, and I haven't been invited back since then. I guess I ate too much. Councilor Randy Groves, come on down, man.
Yeah, shame me into that. My name's Randy Groves, and I'm the Eugene City Councilor for Ward 8, which includes the J.H. Baxter site. J.H. Baxter has been a thorn in my side for 45 years, going back to my early days as a firefighter with Eugene Fire Department. I was also a resident on Wood Avenue from 1983 till 1991. And like you who live here, woke up daily smelling the off-gassing coming from J.H. Baxter. But this is a day of celebration. There's been a lot of days of tears, a lot of days of people suffering from the effects of the chronic toxic pollution. But today, we're finally getting things cleaned up. And I'll tell you, watching EPA, DEQ, LRAPA, City of Eugene, Lane County, Oregon Health Authority, and some of our private groups, Beyond Toxics, ABC, Active Bethel Community, all working together, and the core team has been nothing short of amazing. There's three bulldogs I want to call out. First being Randy Natus from EPA. I met Randy fairly early in the process when he came, and I'm also a former regional hazardous materials team member for the state of Oregon, which Eugene Fire Department staffed back in the days. But when I first met Randy, I was impressed. But you know, the proof is in watching the actions. And man, who went after it? And we've also got Beyond Toxics. It's the whole group. I won't single you out there, leader. But and then the other one is Lynn Woodrich. Lynn Woodrich is a tireless advocate for the Bethel community. And I know sitting on council, I always appreciate her showing up every meeting. And she always has something she's advocating and fighting for. That's fantastic. But what I really, yes, please. What I really want to focus on in my comments, we all have examples of where government just hasn't worked, where there's been interagency conflicts, where things move at glacial speed. This hasn't been one of those. In fact, I would say counter to that, this has been one of the best integrated group of people from the alphabet agencies working together for a common goal, a common purpose, and that is trying to right the wrongs that have happened in this area. And so let's give applause just to how everybody worked together, because it was phenomenal. The level of communication, the level of getting things done, and I'll admit, when I saw the change in federal administration, I was really worried that this might die on the vine. EPA didn't allow that to happen. And that is something to really recognize and be proud of. So again, And I don't know if I mentioned El Rapa earlier on, but if I didn't, El Rapa has certainly been a part of this as well. That's the trouble when you start making notes and you can't. I forgot my glasses back in my chair, so I can't hold it far enough out. So anyway, with that, that's all I really had to say. Thank you all for being here. We care about you. We care about your future. We care about the future of Bethel and the properties around there. One last thing I do want to say, too, is another happy day in my time as a city councilor was the day we had a press conference when EPA first came in. And being able to be led by the hand, literally, by some of the residents that had their yards remade, the contaminated soil being taken out, and fresh soil and plantings being put in place. And that was DEQ, state DEQ that did that. And that was just, it warmed my heart, and it was one of those things where really felt good about seeing that progress. But now we can get the actual site cleaned up. That's just going to be amazing. So with that, I want to say thank you, and I'll turn the mic back over to somebody more qualified than me to speak to.
So I know you didn't want to call her out, but I do want to call out Ms. Ardrey and say thank you so much, Ardrey, for everything that you did with the community and being willing to show up, and everything that you and your family went through to get to where we are today has been nothing short of amazing. So thank you so much. Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Welcome to the people who have joined us as people were giving their introductory remarks. And now we're going to turn this over to the, I think some of us might have called him a terrier, a bulldog, I'm not sure which, Randy Naddis with EPA, to talk a little bit about what he has been managing for the last couple of years since they joined us, and we were so glad that they did. And yeah, he's got pictures that are, if your hair is not already curly, it's gonna get curlier, okay? So just wait till you see what he's got to show. Come on up, Randy, all right?
Thank you, Donna. All right, well, I don't know how to follow any of that, but I definitely want to say welcome to everybody, and what I want to say also is I'm just a small tip of the iceberg. There's a huge team of people that work with me that been doing all of the work, not only staff at EPA, but all of our contract supporters, our state partners, and everyone else. So I appreciate the recognition, but truly it's not me, it's so many other people. So, and it's everyone keeping us honest and keeping our feet to the fire and making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do as a federal agency. So with that said, I'm going to tell you what I did last summer. Or what we did last summer as a federal agency in coordination with all of our partners. Again, my name is Randy Naddis. My official title is on-scene coordinator. I work for EPA. I've been working for EPA for nearly 20 years doing this job. I take this job very seriously. My job is to protect human health and the environment, right? Which is what I try to do every single day. I'm a little emotional today because of everyone and what everyone is saying. Like, this is a journey, it's a celebration, it's a chapter in a long story. It's hard to say celebration when there's been 80 years of, impacts to locals, right? But it is a celebration because we have been making progress, been working together. And I'm going to tell you what we did. So I'm going to get to it. So back in August of last year, EPA mobilized to what Emma was talking about as a time-critical removal action. Over the last couple of years leading up to August, we spent about a year, maybe a year and a half, figuring out what is going on here. What are the risks? What are the chemicals? What's the threat? How bad is it? And let me back up for a little bit. So we talked about I think it was Randy mentioned about the residential sampling. We helped DEQ doing residential sampling, and then they did the removals on those properties. And I remember walking with my DEQ counterparts through the neighborhood, and I was looking through the fence line, like generally everyone's done here, and said, what is behind the fence line? What's over there? I know we're talking about soil contamination from this site, but can I go see the site? I think we should look at the site. So we did that. And through that work, we found that there were hundreds of thousands of gallons of toxic chemicals that were staged still in tanks. Well, the story goes that J.H. Baxter was treating wood in January of 2022, and in February of 2022, they stopped. So the facility was full of chemicals. The pipes were full of chemicals. The containers were full of chemicals. The process retorts were full of chemicals. It's a big apple to chew on, and we have to figure out how to take the small bites so we can figure out how to make this safe for the community and remove the most imminent and substantial threats to what's in the neighborhood. So that was the area view. Now let's take a walk through the facility. I'm sure, raise of hands, has anyone ever seen this facility on the inside? I know Randy has. Right? So this is what we had. The EPA was asked to go through this assessment and look at it from the state. The state asked us to do it. Okay, we're going to look at it. And we have to figure out, okay, not only do we know that there are hundreds of thousands of gallons of chemicals in these things, and we know we need to get rid of them. They pose a threat, fire threat, catastrophic release threat. But how? How are we going to do this? You can't just take a wrecking ball to it. So we had to do structural engineering. We had to figure out what is in each one of these tanks. Is it full? Is it liquid? Is it solid? Is it a mix? Is it, what kind of chemicals are they? Can they be mixed and grouped and disposed of? Do they need special treatment? How do we get to the back of the tank when there's all these pipes in the way? Are there asbestos on these pipes? Do we need to remove the asbestos off the pipes before we can get to the pipes? You start thinking about, how do I unwind this ball of yarn to figure out how are we going to do this work? It took a while. It took a long time. And we kept having core meetings. We had a public meeting. We're going to do this. We're studying it. We got to figure it out. We got to do it safely. We're going to have workers in here that are cutting these tanks open. They're cutting these pipes, sucking out toxic materials from the tanks and the pipes. We want to make sure they're doing it safely. Once we do that, well, where are we sending it? Where's the material going to go? How expensive is it going to be? Do we need to do treatment to that material before it goes somewhere? So this is a big apple, and we got to take small bites. And this video goes on and on. I'm probably going to get looks to wrap this up, but I'm going to let it go for a little while because this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Those are those retorts, right? These 150-foot pressurized cylinders where the wood went in. They got pressurized with chemicals and heat so they can treat the wood for, putting power poles out. All the pipes, underground pipes. One of the challenges that we had was that this facility was still electrified. So electricity was running through it. So we just can't start ripping into things without first identifying where the electricity is, turning things off. We can't just cut the power altogether because there's still important processes that are going on that we need power to. So again, it's how many threads can we pull and where are we going to start basically mopping ourselves out of the corner, right? Or out of the room, not cornering ourselves. So I want to move on here because this just continues to go. But I wanted you to get a sense of what I and my whole team, and EPA with state partnership, had to figure out to move this forward, right? Because we realized it was a challenge. It just goes on. Has anyone seen this before? It's crazy. There's a lot here. A lot of pipes. Everything's full. What we learned is that there's a lot of asbestos out here. We'll go through that in a little bit. I'm going to hit the next here. This is going to go. All right. So we figured it out. We knew what we were going to do. We got a funding mechanism. We had funding. We had support all the way up with an EPA to do this work. And so now it's time to do the work. First, we're going to get the liquids out of the tanks, liquids that we can get out. We're going to pump them into Baxter trucks, and we're going to send them off for disposal. But in order to get to these tanks, we have to drill holes in the tanks. We have to sometimes go over the top to the top of the tank, the stop from the top. Sometimes we have to go from the bottom. Sometimes there's a layer of solid in the middle of the tank. above, there's a solid, and there's liquid below. So we had to do all this investigation and all this hard work to get the material out so we can consolidate it and send it off for disposal. All while doing air monitoring and air sampling, making sure that not only our workers are safe, but the community is safe. So we have specialized equipment to do all sorts of air monitoring, as well as taking actual samples and sending them off to a laboratory to verify that what we're doing is safe. And while we're doing it, we have our folks in respiration, wearing masks, and then wearing protective equipment. Here's a time lapse. Okay, so now in this situation, we've emptied the tank, but now we have to demolish the tank. We have to cut it open, and we have to remove it. We do all sorts of work here. So we do hand cutting around the tank, and we leave tabs, and we cut different layers on them, and then they rig it up to pull it off, right? So now we have the long reach and the basket, rigging up some rope or some chains. We'll have the excavator poke the tabs out. It will take the weight on it, it will pull it down, right? And they'll re-rig it, and that will be pulled off. We'll go clean it, recycle it. And then the next with the lower tank. 65, more than 65 tanks. Each one of these tanks had to be dealt with differently. Some of them were big, we had to bring a crane out. Some of them were chock full, and we had to mix inside the tank to solidify whatever was there before we can pull it out. In some cases, we couldn't pump it at all, and we actually had to do the handwork. So we had to cut open the tanks, and folks had to sometimes go inside the tank to use a vacuum, a very strong vacuum truck, to pull the sludges out. So this was the work on every tank, on every pipe. You can see how dirty those guys are. And each one of those pipes needs to be cut to a certain length. It needs to be about 10 feet, because we need to send those pipes off for disposal. So they have to be in a certain size, so they can go in a roll-off bin, so they can properly go for disposal. So we can't just leave things at different lengths. So it's a lot of hard work. Again, stepping out. There's always a meeting every day. Okay, we're going to work on this tank. We have to do these 4 pipes first. Then we're going to do this tank, these 6 pipes first. So we're always figuring out the next phase every day. And then when those sludges were pulled out, well, we need to do something with them. So those sludges need to be solidified. They need to be dried. They need to be stabilized. So we mix it with some perlite, and then we stage those and eventually for disposal. So there's a process, right? And we generated a lot of sludges. That's what that work would be. You can see we have a person here in a level of protection, wearing respiration. That person is in an enclosed cab, so there's no need for respiration. But as you'd imagine, if you thought you smelled it in your neighborhood, you know what they were smelling. All right, this is interesting. Hopefully this worked. I tried to put this together for like 3 days. So this is side-by-side videos. I think the other one's moving. So I talked about asbestos and abatement. The process of wood treating requires to have a solution warm. And then you put it under pressure. We were talking earlier about it's like a pressure cooker, right? It's like a crock pot or something like that. Imagine this is like a very large pressure cooker. It has to go under pressure. The wood goes in there. The solution, the chlorophenol and the mixed with diesel goes in there, and it stays under pressure for a while. But in order for that to work, there needs to be insulation around these process vessels, these retorts. Well, back when these were built, a long time ago, they used asbestos-containing material, very industrial strength asbestos to help do insulation. It's very good at that. It's also very good at making people sick if you get exposed to asbestos. And in this case, this was highly friable asbestos material, meaning that if you mess with it, it will start turning into powder, and it will go into the air, and those asbestos fibers can end up in your lungs. In order for us to empty these retorts and then remove those retorts, we needed to first abate or remove the asbestos from the retorts. And we worked with our partners at LRAPA, as well as internally at EPA, all of our asbestos experts, to build this enclosure to allow us to safely do this abatement. This was a big deal. It took about 8 weeks to do. And even before we do this abatement, we had to clean all of the concrete around the retorts to make it as clean as possible to lay down that plastic. Because as we dropped the material, we couldn't have it mixed. We didn't want it to be mixed with the sludges on the ground because it changed the way we had to handle and dispose of the material. So we did our best to line it and then to clean it out. Why this tent's important, if you notice, it's sort of being sucked in a little bit. So that tent's under negative pressure. There are about 8 negative air units on this tent, pulling the air in. And what that does is when the workers are doing the abatement, I think you might be able to see on that top, there's some folks on that top level, when they're doing that handwork, they will, even though they're wetting the material, there might be some fibers that get generated in the air. The negative pressure is supposed to pull the air through a filter and capture whatever fibers might be in there. And so that's very important to have this tent in place to do this work, and it worked. So this was a lot of work, and it was just another step in the process of another bite off that apple. I think I can move to the next one. So I have a video of the actual handwork of this asbestos removal, so you can see the workers in their personal protective equipment, their PPE, and their respirators doing work on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, we had Coast Guard. There are federal partners that can provide a lot of services to EPA, and we partnered with them to provide some health and safety expertise. And they're monitoring the asbestos containing unit here, making sure that the air is under the appropriate pressure, or negative pressure, and they're also evaluating the shower system, so when the workers come out of the zone, or the sort of the hot zone as we call it, they go through this shower, and whatever's on them gets washed off, and all that water gets collected and cleaned. So they were just doing that support for us, but you can see how involved this process is. So we did all that abatement work so we can ultimately address and remove the actual pressurized cylinders, those retorts. Before we can remove them, we have to clean them. We have to remove the sludges. This is what a day in the life of a retort cleaner looks like. It's pretty dirty. Thankfully, it wasn't a hot day like today, but it was definitely hot days out there, and they're working on these cylinders. Again, personal protective equipment. We're doing all of our air monitoring. They're as safe as they can be, but you can see they're pretty dirty. So this is the work that they needed to do in order to clean those things out. And all of that liquid is generating sludges that then we need to stabilize and dispose of. So that's hazardous sludges. But you can see there's no more insulation on those, right? So we cleared off the insulation, that's been removed and taken care of. So now we can remove the actual retort. You can see it's much cleaner. There's less sludges in there, so now we're cutting them up. We cut them in 10 or 12-foot sections, depending on the size of them. Half moons, we do a top and then a bottom, and then we remove them, clean them, and recycle them. The retorts are roughly an inch, if not a little bit more, inch thick steel, very hard to cut through. So those are 2 plasma torches they just sit there. It's probably like a video game to them, I don't know, but they just sit there and cut away. And this person has a hose, he's on fire watch. Right? So pentachlorophenol, which is the primary wood treating solution we use, one of the things that's important to know about, depending on the solution that's being used in the wood treating, it's roughly 5 to 9% penta. The rest is diesel. Right? It's fuel. Diesel is used as a carrier to get it into the wood. So, it will catch on fire, as you would imagine. So we have to have someone there doing fire watch in case there's some sparks and we need to clean up all the sludges. So that's why they're there doing that. And along the way, we ran into other challenges. We were focused as a removal program, as a time-critical removal, to working on the worst of the worst, right? And as we're doing the worst of the worst, of course, we're still going to run into other issues. We're going to pull up, the containment where everything was sitting on the concrete containment. We call it the secondary containment. Well, when we pull that up, sure enough, we find some stuff under the ground. As you would imagine, there's old pipes, there's contamination, there's sludges. This is why this is a Superfund site. There's going to be longer-term studies and a longer look at how to address this. But these are other things that we found as we went through it, right? A pool of oil. We did suck that out. We didn't leave that. But there are some other things that there's just we couldn't do. There needs to be a longer study, and that's what Andy's going to talk about. But these are some challenges along the way. And as we know, another challenge here in Eugene or in the Pacific Northwest is it rains a lot. It rained a lot last year. I think we had 60, 70 inches of rain, which is a problem when you have an open air facility like this. So when it rains and water falls in those containments, that water is now contacting hazardous substances, and that water is now considered hazardous substance. Right? It's going to pick up the metals and the other thing that are in those metals, the other thing that's in that containment, the sludges. So that requires us to do more work. We have to capture and collect all of that water, all of that rainwater, and evaporate it. We collected it and evaporated over 370,000 gallons of water that fell in that facility. And this morning, I was on site, and I asked my contractors who are still there to tie me to, close your ears, Bob, tie me with fall protection to our forklift on a pallet and put me as high up as possible, and I took this picture this morning. So this is what it looks like today. All that stuff's gone. That's all I have. I think I will take questions if there are any questions. And if there aren't, I really just want to thank everyone for helping us do this process. Mm-hmm.
So hang on one second. Let me.
Hold on. Has a mic.
Hello. It's not a mic.
That's her mic. There's another mic there.
Sorry, TV land. We have another mic. Sorry, Kennedy. You're good. All right. So who was it? It was Robin. So Randy, the tent that was over the retorts, was it over all of the retorts at the same time? So you could just suck it all into the thing?
Yes, it was. It was, and we had some windy days where we had to repair it and we had to stop our operations. It was a challenge. And again, I want to call out El Rapa as one of our strong partners in that activity. I don't think we would have been able to do it without their support and their guidance and their help. So thank you so much.
Randy, I'd like to know, how did you dispose of everything you said we had to dispose of it? How and where did you dispose of it?
That's a really good question. We still, and I should say, we still have some things to dispose of, so we're not fully done. The demolition and the construction work is over, but it gets hauled off depending on where it's going. Some of it goes here in the state, some of it goes to a different state. But most of that material has to be incinerated, has to be burnt, because it has materials in there that can't go anywhere else. So most of it goes to incinerators.
Do you have another question about that?
Well, actually, so my question was, you're currently evaporating the contaminated rainwater. Is that what the constant emissions from the Baxter site are?
We're done, but we were evaporating.
They're still going as of just a couple days ago.
There must be somewhere else because we're not doing it anymore, I promise you. I'll go back to that picture.
I can show you a video.
It's not there anymore.
But that was contaminated rainwater that was emitting
Yeah.
from Baxter for the past several months.
Well, yeah, and that's a traditional way that water gets evaporated from witch readers. They use water cooling towers, and previously, as you're probably aware, they had a permit to do that same process.
And so the permit to continue polluting the air in the neighborhood here.
I would say that's a good question. We can hold it for later. We did sample anything around there, and it was
And then to
water
follow
vapor.
up, where did you take those materials to be incinerated to?
To an approved incinerator in Utah. Yeah, it's called a aragonite. Aragonite. Yes.
Let me just check for a second. I do want to respect the folks that are in the room. I want to see, are there any questions on the Zoom from our online folks, Emily, that are in the chat that we need to know about? And if so, I'll come to you with the microphone. Okay, we'll hold on that one. Okay, good. All right, so back in the room. I'm going to pop to the community members first, and I'll be back soon. Okay?
Do you know what chemicals were used over the course of the years that Baxter used? And I mean, is it something that's going to stay with us for a while, or is it something that can be extracted? I guess I was just curious what chemicals. I mean, obviously it's bad enough to have it become toxic. So.
Right. Yeah, they had a few different wood treating processes. One of them was using pentachlorophenol. One of them was using creosote. And then they use a metal mixture of arsenic and copper to also treat wood. I hope that answers your question. They had a lot of different chemicals on site that they use in their processes, but it was their traditional wood treating chemicals.
All right, a couple more questions for you.
Yes. I was looking at the picture you showed from Skinner's Butte out to the plant there. And since the mid-50s, I grew up and worked and lived in that area. And I lived in Bethel, right across the street from this plant from 2002 to 2007. I was literally eating this stuff for 5 years, my family and I. And our back south wall of our manufactured home had this brown stuff running down the walls, just like what was in the plant where the guys were running around in their toxic-proof suits. Mm-hmm. We didn't have any toxic-proof suits. We're just eating this stuff. No wonder I've had a headache for 40 years.
Okay, here, then here, there. I'm not sure that you're the person to answer the question, but I have two questions actually. Who should have been in charge way back in finding out the pollution that they were producing? And second of all, why did it take so many years?
Yeah, I don't know if I can answer either one of those questions. I hate to do that, but I don't think I can answer either one of those.
Because you're not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure, right? So my job is, again, to do cleanups, right?
It's a tough one to answer.
It's a tough
because
one.
it goes back so far,
Right.
right? So, good, great question, and who knows right now? Ready?
I have a question about medical follow-up for children who were conceived and born during the 2019 boil-offs. My daughter is 5, and yeah, I'm concerned. And I want to know if there's any testing or anything that I can take to her doctor and maybe find out if she's okay or if this impacted her.
Yeah, I think that's a good question for our partners at the Oregon Health Authority. And I know they've worked along, and I don't know if someone's on that for that, but they're part of our core team, and they've been doing a lot of health consults over the years. I think they're probably the better folks to answer that question. You know, Donna, I maybe one or two more because Amy is really where we're going next, right?
Yeah. What's the status now? What goes on from that?
That's a great lead-in.
Ask that again in a minute, right? Let this one ask a question
Yeah.
about Randy's, then you can ask it, and we'll turn it to Annie, because Annie's going to answer that for you. All right. First of all, thank you, and for everybody for what you guys are doing. My question is, and you may not be able to answer this, we didn't purchase our home until the factory stopped, like that month, that year. Our salesperson, of course, said nothing. We knew nothing. We found out once the documents were signed and we moved in. So do we know where the barrier is? Like, we want to plant a garden, there's things we want to do, but we don't know because we were too late to in the neighborhood. We're on Elmira and La Casa, so we're like right next to Baxter. But
Well, this is also a good lead into the next phase where EPA is looking at where that is, what the nature and the extent of what the contamination could look like. So I think, thank you very much for your time. Obviously, I'll be around for questions
future. Okay, so there is a question on the Zoom, but it looks like it's future focused, so we're going to hold it until Annie goes and does her presentation. It might answer the question. If it doesn't, we'll have time after. Annie, thank you.
All right. There we go. My name is Annie Christopher. I'm a remedial project manager for EPA. I work in our Portland office. So I know you guys are all familiar with Randy, but the site will be transitioning from the removal program to the remedial program. So my face is what you'll see a lot more often in the next couple months and a couple years. Next slide. So Randy's been telling you about the removal program work, but under Superfund, we have two different types of work that can happen. So we use removal actions for emergency oil spills and chemical releases or short-term cleanups, which is what Randy has been doing the past year. And then we also have remedial actions, and that's used for complex sites that require a longer-term cleanup. And so that is what is transitioning to me. The EPA remedial program is gearing up to clean up the rest of the site that remains. Next slide. So, of course, Randy has just gone through the whole before and after process for his removal action, but there is still contamination out there that needs to be addressed, and that is what EPA will be doing moving forward. The EPA Superfund remedial cleanup process is lengthy. Everything Randy has just gone through is very exciting and moves quickly, but as we transition into the remedial process, things will look a little different. But to go over the whole timeline, we start with the assessment process, which Justin is here with us. He's our site assessment manager. So our site assessment team went out and did their work. That's how we put together the site listing package, and a bunch of sampling was done before Randy's removal action. And they kind of worked hand in hand to get the site listing package together. That gets evaluated by EPA headquarters, and that's how we got here today with the National Priorities Site listing. So now that the site is listed on the National Priorities List, we will be moving into the next phase, which is characterization. So under the characterization phase, we will be doing a remedial investigation and feasibility study, and that leads to a proposed plan, and I'll get into that in the next couple of slides. After the proposed plan, we come up with a selected remedy that gets documented in the record of decision, and then we do the actual cleanup, whatever the cleanup plan calls for. We design the cleanup and then do the actual construction, which is under cleanup, remedial design, and remedial action. And then after the cleanup itself, there's usually longer-term operation and maintenance of the remedy and monitoring. And then ultimately, our goal is to get the site deleted from the National Priorities List. So during the whole process, community involvement takes place. Alice will come up in a minute and tell you more about community involvement. But also, someone mentioned before, redevelopment of Superfund sites is always in the back of our mind. So as we're characterizing the site and figuring out how we're going to clean it up, we want our cleanup to be compatible with an ultimate reuse of the site. So EPA always keeps redevelopment in the back of our mind as we're picking a remedy and going through our whole process. And then there's a note at the bottom that removal actions can occur at any time during this process and simultaneously while we're doing the characterization work. So Randy is concluding his removal action, but if you go to the next slide. EPA will also be evaluating the need if there's any other potential for an early action, which is basically an additional removal action. So the EPA remedial team will continue coordinating with the EPA removal team to see if there's any efficiencies that we can gain through both programs to strategize this cleanup and see if there's any additional removal actions that make sense. And that would be for kind of the worst areas of the site with the contamination, like Randy showed, the sludge that was found under some of the buildings and the tank farm areas. We'll see if it makes sense to do any type of more immediate removal action while we're doing the full investigation of the site. So obviously this site is a very high priority for EPA, and we hope to streamline this cleanup process as much as we can. Next slide. So as we move into the remedial investigation, EPA is currently working to set up our contract to have the remedial investigation and feasibility study done. There's a lot of data that already exists for the site. So EPA will evaluate all the data that's been collected by the facility owner originally. Oregon DEQ has a lot of data. EPA's site assessment program collected data when we put together the site listing package. Randy has also collected data during the removal action. So we will compile all the existing data to determine what data gaps still exist and what additional sampling is needed. And a lot of that data was collected while the facility was still operating. So now that the facility is closed and all those tanks are gone, it's easier for EPA to get in there and collect more soil samples and groundwater samples across the whole property. And so we will be evaluating multiple sources of contamination at the site and off-site. We'll look at the soil, groundwater, and stormwater on the property itself. We'll also continue to look at the residential properties across the street that could potentially still be impacted by the site contaminants. We'll also look at groundwater and stormwater that migrates off the property. And we'll look into surface water and sediment that has also potentially been impacted by the contaminants from the property. Next slide. And this is just an example of a figure. During the site assessment process, EPA collected 52 sediment samples and 26 surface water samples to assess how the contaminants may be moving off the property. So we will continue to look into this pathway during the remedial investigation. Next slide. So during the remedial investigation, EPA does a human health risk assessment and a baseline ecological risk assessment, and that will assess the potential exposure pathways from the contaminants at this property. So we will continue to look into the risks to residents across the street as well as other exposure pathways. And we will continue to work with DEQ and OHA on their risk assessment and work together with multiple agencies to come up with the human health risk assessment and baseline ecological assessment for the EPA remedial investigation. Then we'll actually go out and collect all the additional sampling on the property and on those off-property pathways. And then the results of all that sampling will determine the final list of they're called the contaminants of concern, the exposure pathways of concern, and then that will help delineate the areas of contamination that pose unacceptable risk. So I think someone asked about the site boundary definition. EPA uses unacceptable risk from the contamination from this site as the site boundary. So it's not just the immediate property, it's anywhere the contaminants have come to be that pose unacceptable risk. So like I said, that could include the sediment pathway in Amazon Creek if the sampling shows that that's necessary. It could be a groundwater plume that's extending off the property. So all the sampling and data will confirm what exactly is included in the site boundary. Next slide. So once we finish the remedial investigation, we do what's called a feasibility study. And in this study, we evaluate multiple technologies that can be used to clean up the different media that's impacted by the contaminants. So that includes the soil, groundwater, stormwater, surface water, and sediment. Some examples of how to clean those media up include soil excavation and disposal, like Randy has done during the removal action. You can treat soil and groundwater in place. There's potential that we would continue to use the current existing groundwater pump and treat system and stormwater treatment system. We'll evaluate those systems to see if there's any improvements that need to happen to those systems. There's a potential to cap soil in place, And then for sediment, it's usually dredging or capping. But like I said, the feasibility study will evaluate a range of technologies that could be used. And then after the feasibility study, EPA selects a preferred alternative or a combination of those technologies for each media, and we put that together in a document called the proposed plan. And that goes out for public comment. So we would have another meeting like this and go over comments that we receive. We usually put out fact sheets, and actually this is the perfect transition. Alice is going to come up and talk about the community involvement opportunities throughout this process, including for the proposed plan. Sure.
I have a question. Are you also going to be testing the wells? Because there's people in the neighborhood who have been drinking that well water and actually have gotten sick.
Evaluating groundwater is definitely one pathway that we will be looking at. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Alice Corcoran. I'm a Community Involvement Coordinator and Public Affairs Specialist with the EPA, and I have been working on Baxter for about 3 years now, so I know quite a few of you in this room, and I'm really excited to be here with you as we talk about becoming a Superfund site. So I'm here to talk about your community involvement opportunities moving forward. You're a very involved community, and it's great, and I've really enjoyed working with you. I know we all have. So what happens next is EPA will put together a community involvement plan, or a CIP. We love our acronyms. And a CIP is exactly what it sounds like. It is our plan for how to involve and engage you all moving forward. So this could be, it could outline a desired frequency of public meetings. It could outline, how often you want to receive fact sheets, those kinds of things. And the community involvement plan goes out for public comment. So you can say, hey, you got this wrong. Nobody gets their news from this source. We all get our news from this source. Things like that. So it kind of just outlines how we'll reach out to you, engage you, how often, those sorts of things. And it's a living document. It's updated on an as-needed basis. And I'll reach out to many of you for interviews. If you're so inclined, you absolutely don't have to, of course, but all interviews are anonymous, and then they're summarized at the end of the community involvement plan. So that's something you'll probably see Alice Corcoran in your inbox or something later on. We also offer technical assistance grants, or TAGs. A community group can apply for a TAG later on. So it's an initial grant of $50,000. And what a TAG grant is designed to do is to give you a third-party opinion or a technical advisor. So not proposed plan comes out that Annie was talking about. And it has all that data and all that information about, okay, here's what EPA wants to do. Here's our plan. You could have a third party review that and kind of break it down for you and say, hey, here it is in good old plain English. So it's a really valuable thing to have and something you might want to consider. And then we have community meetings as needed. CMAN is not an actual acronym that we use, but I like it, and I'm going to start using it. So, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? We'll host community meetings. For example, when a proposed plan comes out, EPA doesn't have to, by law, hold a community meeting. But if there's interest for it, which I can predict there will be, we'll hold one. So it's just us engaging with you and you talking to us, and we'll figure out a good rhythm moving forward. And so those are the highlights of community involvement as the site becomes a Superfund site and transitions into that sort of work. And then I think that might be the end of the slideshow. Unless, Andy, you have something else? Yeah. All right.
Okay, so let's see if there are any more questions for the EPA folks about what's going to be happening next. And thank
This is the third Baxter Superfund cleanup site in Oregon, and there's been dozens around the country. Earlier, it was a question of why did that take so long? So I'm curious if anybody could address that. That's one. Two, in that remedial site initial assessments, there was dioxin found in Cranesong Park, which is still there. And kids are still playing in that park. It's said that it can't be coming from Baxter because it's too far away, it's close to the train yards. We know the train yards are polluted. That's been an ongoing thing, at least since the late 90s when DEQ started assessing that problem. I'm wondering how we're going to get to not just the Baxter site, but the entire conflagration of environmental, industrial, toxic waste that is within this neighborhood. The railroad, the Cranesong Park, I don't know, the Snitcher Steel, the glue lamp facility, the contaminated or chemical, maybe fuel rail cars that stack up behind the apartment buildings that are sharing a driveway with a hazardous waste facility. I'm wondering if anybody can address any of those questions. And then more specifically, you mentioned the aragonite disposal facility, but you also mentioned that you sent some of that waste to facilities here in Oregon. And I'm wondering where those are or what that is.
That sounds like Randy.
Arlington, as you were probably aware, the material that we sent for disposal for the asbestos-containing material as well as our RCRA debris was encapsulated and disposed at Arlington facility in Oregon.
I was just hoping it wasn't, half a mile away.
No.
Just right around the corner.
Yeah, no. EPA has a lot of regulations and requirements, and we have something called the offsite rule, and where we send our contamination or for disposal has to go to approved, landfills. And yeah, not for this stuff. Yeah,
So
not for this,
not for this stuff. So they had to send it further
Yeah.
for this particular one, and that reminds me that there might be something like that.
I just wanted to offer quickly, I'm not going to claim familiarity with the particular facilities or sites in the area. I'm sure there's folks that are partner agencies and at EPA that have visibility on that. I will say, you have a point, right? I will say that we're hearing from our leadership at EPA headquarters that there is sort of this concern around we've been implementing CERCLA for 40 plus years, that we have a sense of what types of facilities have the potential to create Superfund sites. And so what are we thinking about in terms of being more proactive to get out ahead of that so that we know that facilities are appropriately regulated and we have appropriate protections in place to ensure that we don't get to the point that we got to with Baxter. That we are, there's lots of contaminated sites around the country. It's true, not all of them are national priority listed. But there is, I want to acknowledge that yes, there is a lot of work to be done and that our leadership from EPA headquarters is really thinking hard about how we bring together the appropriate parties to be more proactive about ensuring that we get to a better place than where we are today, right? I mentioned earlier that when Baxter first started operating, we didn't have a lot of the environmental laws that we have today. Know better, do better, right? There's a lot of really committed professionals.
They are in place, but poorly regulated.
So we're going to stay focused on Jay Baxter, make sure that folks that want to have some more questions, we got a couple of yours. I'm going to go to Tessa first. Thank you for that. Do you want to finish? Sorry, yeah.
I just wanted to sort of, there's a lot of really committed professionals at EPA and at our partner agencies that are working really hard on this. And so I appreciate your concern and anxiety on the issue, and it's valid. And there's a lot of folks that are working really hard on it.
Yeah, that's why we're here to celebrate.
I just want to say thank you, everybody who's been working on this for years to get the Superfund designation. That is wild in my mind that I live in an area that has a Superfund designation. I'm just wondering how many applications are there correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know the total number of sites that we assess across the country, but less than 1% become Superfund sites. A lot of sites we take a look at and we refer to our state partners. The state of Oregon has a great cleanup program. They're doing cleanup work all over the state. We also have regulatory programs that help with that. So when we take a look at a site, we try to find the best place to get the issues addressed. And the Superfund designation is kind of the last resort. So that's why we get to sort of the 1%.
Good. Okay. Another question here, right?
Yeah, does your inspection boundary include the scrapyard next door to this place? I mean, this is place, you can't tell me there's not any pollution underneath that.
So,
Adding to it or hiding it or whatever because they crush cars in there all day, whole cars, fuel, everything.
yeah, that property used to be part of the J.H. Baxter property, and it was sold.
So are you going to inspect that property too, or are they just immune from all of it?
Tricky answer. So if it's contamination from that currently operating facility, that wouldn't necessarily be part of this investigation, but because that property was previously part of the J.H. Baxter property, it was sold and capped and sold to the metal recycler. So we could potentially check to see if there's any impact from the previous work from J.H. Baxter on that part of the property. But the current company that's operating on that site would not be included in this investigation.
Right? Interesting, isn't it? One of our core notes, that's interesting, she said. See, people are still learning things every time we come together. Any other questions? You want to ask the question? Because she'd like you to.
They were talking about how the Environmental Protection Agency is going to have a part where they have to find out how human beings are affected. I mean, already they're talking about water, air, and everything else. But I'm sure that a lot of people from Bethel and around town want to find out how the Environmental Protection Agency, do they classify human beings as part of the environment?
So we do a human health risk assessment.
That's what I was trying to get
Yeah,
at.
and an ecological risk assessment. So we evaluate both exposures to humans and
Yeah, okay, well, that's good. Now we're on the same page. Because they really need to get, you said, a third party to help the human beings, right?
a third. Are you talking about the grant that we could potentially give out? That's a third party technical advisor for the community groups.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out who's going to step in and help the human beings.
We are.
That's good. Because I think a lot of people are waiting for that, and they want them to get to it quick.
Yeah, well, I want to say something about that, Roger, because I think one of the things that was amazing about the core team and having the community at the table with these agencies is that early on, they said, we're not data points, we're people. And we want you to know us as people. And they committed to that. And Ardrey, I think one of the reasons we want to call Ardrey out is Ardrey did a story, a video story of her experience with her child who was sick. And yeah, it was a wonderful story, and I know, when we did a core team meeting, they invited me to watch the video, just a little private show. And I said, well, let's show this to the core team, because I want the agencies to see exactly what Lynn had been talking about, that these are people, not just data points. So this group is very on board with you on that. They're very on board. Yeah.
And they did a little bit of research into that.
Yes.
And found out how come 37 people died in so many square blocks. And they go, this doesn't happen unless there's a serious problem. And this is why we're sending this toxin stuff over to the Hanford disposal area, because this is something that's very dangerous. So we can't be concerned enough.
Right. And we can be.
I've been eating this stuff for 50 years.
I know. And now, thank heavens we're at a point that we are now. And so thank you for being here with us, Roger. Leslie.
I wanted to know more about this group I wanted to know more about the group that's involved with people getting sick from the chemicals in Baxter. I'm one of those people, but I haven't been able to connect with anybody else about it. And I wanted, you said from the EPA that they are helping or doing something about the people, and I want to know what that is and what I can do, what I need to do.
So we did pass on your name and phone number as you requested to the Oregon Health Authority, so they will be in contact with you about that, and I'll let you answer however you want to answer that.
Do you have a question, or did you want to respond to her?
Actually, I guess it's the answer.
Okay, along with a couple other people, we handed out 310 door hangers just before the meeting and talked to the people along the way, and there were quite a few people who said they had cancer or their neighbor had cancer, and so I'm just wondering, are you going to be going door to door to all the families like we did to talk to them and find out what's going on, or if they know of people who've moved away that had the cancer, because it's really important that, even in the Georgia Baxter trial, that they said there was no way that they could say that it was because of J.H. Baxter. But we know it is. So what we need to do is to go to those, for you to go to all the homes and talk to the people. Are you going to be able to do that?
So,
I'll help.
Just to clarify a little bit more information about how a human health risk assessment works for EPA, we evaluate the chemicals that we know were generated from this facility, where they've migrated, and what the risk is from an exposure to those chemicals. So I'm not sure that if an EPA human health risk assessment actually looks at every household across the street to see what illnesses have happened. It's a theoretical evaluation of calculating a risk from an exposure to these specific chemicals from the site. So I'm not totally sure.
That's just data. We don't want data.
So there's been a number of mentions of the Oregon Health Authority, and there's another federal agency that is similar, and they're the public health agencies that we work closely with. We're kind of the environmental side. So under the Centers for Disease Control, it's called the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry. And they do have resources for epidemiological studies and other types of public health things. And so maybe at a future public meeting, we could get ATSDR here and Oregon Health Authority to talk about how the public health and the environmental health kind of come together. But Amy's right. The human health risk assessment EPA doesn't look at the past emissions from the facility and potential health outcomes. We look at the existing contamination and what risks it's posing to public health and the environment now, and how to basically address that risk and remove that risk.
And I want to acknowledge that we do have people from the Oregon Health Authority who have been part of the core team, and they are online tonight. So they are hearing what you're asking about and already receiving emails from Brad, who's one of the managers at the EQ that's in charge of cleanup in this area, from me, from some others. So we are getting information to them. Okay. All right. You were next, and then Linda.
Actually, I have a question. I live on, we live on Corey Avenue, which is about a block or two away from the Baxter site. And it's on the edge of the area that was already, the soil was already tested. Well, we currently like to grow our vegetables in a garden in our front yard. And we've lately let our crops die out because we're paranoid about eating the vegetables that were growing in our soil. We don't know if our soil is contaminated or not. Are you guys going to expand the area that was tested to the outlying neighborhoods? Because we're literally right on the line.
We are 500 feet from the plant.
Yeah, the human health risk assessment as part of the remedial investigation will look at all existing data and evaluate, do we need to get more data? Should other properties be evaluated?
this area, the businesses, the school districts, and some of the people I know working in the school district also live in the neighborhood. So it's not, I think the most important are the people who live here, but I think you also need to be looking at people who are working here every day.
Yeah, a human health
Says a teacher in the area of 28 years, right?
The human health risk assessment evaluates the different exposures, and that includes the amount of time you're exposed to something. So obviously, if you live here, you're exposed a greater percent of the time. But if you also work in the area, that is a different amount of time, but that is still looked at. So we evaluate the different exposure scenarios and the amount of time you're exposed.
Will there be testing indoors? I am finding random weird chemical substances in my light fixtures, and I am concerned that it might be condensation and chemicals from the plant because of my proximity.
I mean, yeah, we will evaluate many different pathways of how contamination could have migrated off the property. So we could look into that.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Annie. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I'm going to walk up so everybody can see me, because I'm not shy. I just, I would be remiss to not thank you publicly for what you've done for that fall. I'm not going to cry. I'm a crier. I always cry when you cry, so I'm going to hold back. But I want everybody to remember that we're here for celebration. I understand the anxiety. I understand the fear. I know it well. A lot of you know my story. I have a child who got Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had to have a stem cell transplant to survive. That's how she survived. So I'm here to say we're celebrating. This is great. This is fantastic. This is what we wanted. This is what we started to do. So I hear the fear. I hear the anxiety. I hear the anger. But it's directed at the wrong people. Because these people did it. We did it. So remember, this is a celebration. This is not finger pointing. This is not saying, what's going on over there? Because we're celebrating what's going on here right now with J.H. Baxter. So I didn't have a question, but it was burning in me to say that. Okay.
Okay, nice. That seems like a good note unless somebody's got a burning question or you got one there on the... No, because Audrey ended on a burning feeling there. So. Yeah. It's been good. It's been a great meeting tonight, so I really appreciate that. I really appreciate the spirit that you came. I think we've been at some other ones in the past. So we're glad to be here tonight. We thank you all. I want to thank the Bethel School District for letting us be here tonight. I want to thank Rick. Where is Rick? There he is back there. Rick, who helped us set all of this up tonight and stayed over tonight, listening to us every time. Thank you so much, Rick. Thank you to Alicia for helping us figure all this out. Thank you for Lynn for connecting us and Dylan and everybody else. And I see Robin had something.
One last question.
Okay.
Are we going to still be doing any core meetings, groups?
Any more core group meetings in the future, or are we going to be shuffled off to tag? I have a hard time imagining you all being shuffled off anywhere underground, actually. Yeah, I'll let you answer that.
Yes. There will be core team meetings. Don't you worry, Robin.
Yeah, this isn't the end of the core team, but we did want to share this information with the core team and the rest of the community all at once, so you could all hear the information, meet people who are leading this charge for us. Thank you all very much for doing that. I want Ruth. I don't think anybody introduced Ruth. Ruth is the new regional administrator for DEQ around here, so I'm going to make sure you get her. And we know that Carol Smith is here as well, so if you want to talk to anybody from the city other than the city councilor, please talk to him. Brad, who is the head of the cleanup here in the region for DEQ. Just want to make sure that Sarah, you already met Justin's with EPA, Max with Laura. I just want to make sure you meet the folks that are working at these agencies welcome. I hope you've enjoyed meeting people. Thank you for bringing the good news to everybody. Emma, everyone, thank you so much. And with that, I think we've got a lot of food back there. I would prefer not to take it back home. So please help yourselves. Talk to people. Use this as an opportunity to share stories, share information. If you have any more questions, ask people tonight or reach out to the information that we gave you there. Thank you all so much. And so, Lynn, can we take up 15 minutes? Lynn? Lynn? Can we take 15 minutes? Do you want to start at 8? Give people a chance to mill around? Or in 15 minutes? What would you like to do? All right, so let's do 15 minutes and I'll start